Hello and welcome back to Afterglow episode 91. This one may be a shorter one, but it's a game I do want to talk about a little bit, which is T2 the arcade game. I mostly actually played this on the Super Nintendo, although I will be covering the arcade version just a little bit. But most of the time whenever I played this, it was indeed on the Super Nintendo, because I believe whenever I was a youngster, I found the arcade machine exactly one time, and then every other time I played the arcade version, it was through emulation. That being said, this is one of those games that was incredibly fun for me, but also incredibly hard. I love the Terminator IP, which is, I think, part of the reason why I like this game so much, because honestly, the difficulty is just insane. Like, very early on, almost. Like, if you can, hammer through the first couple levels, that third level, it just stomps you. But, definitely a game that's not talked about a whole lot anymore, other than the fact that I believe that Arcade 1-Up did release a version of this, if I remember correctly, which is kind of cool. Of course, I didn't end up getting it, and I ended up actually selling off all of my Arcade 1-Ups and switching over just to a single emulation thing. But I thought it was cool whenever I saw it. But enough of me rambling for the intro. Let's listen to some music from this game before we talk about T2 the arcade game, and not Terminator 2 the Super Nintendo abomination of a game. Welcome back. So my first experience with this game was with the arcade game, and it was a theme park called Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Yes, that's the name of the town. But it was really cool. To me, at the time, this machine looked huge. It had these two big SMG-looking guns coming off of it. Oh, it looked so cool. So, of course, I put a quarter in and tried it. Didn't manage to get too far. I want to say I got to the second level, and then I got annihilated. But, man, it was fun. There's a secondary button to fire rockets, if you can pick them up. It's very, very important in this game to find more or less coolant for your gun, because your gun will fire real slow without that coolant. And I can't say I've ever seen a gun use antifreeze before, but I guess it is a future weapon, right? Although it's not a future weapon whenever you get to the past, although I didn't get to the past very often, which we'll talk about here in a few. But that was the one time that I had ever seen this game in an arcade somewhere. Never saw it again. Went back to Holiday World the next year, it was gone. Not in there. But the game did come out for a bunch of systems, and I rented it quite often for the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo version was pretty cool anyway, because not only could you play it with a controller, which I don't recommend, but you could also play it with the Super Scope, which I had, which I also don't recommend. You would think it would play pretty good with it, and it's worth it to play it once or twice, but man, the way to cheese this game and play it is with that Nintendo mouse. The Super Nintendo mouse came with Mario Paint, and I actually managed to get one at one point. Someone had a copy of Mario Paint, they hated it, and I got it. So somehow I got the mouse, and I could play this game with the mouse. Which is weird, because you wouldn't think of using a mouse for a game like this. You'd immediately go to the Super Scope with it, or if you're a Genesis person, you would go to the Sega Menacer. But man, the Super Scope, while it's such a cool accessory, outside of Super Scope 6, I didn't use it very much. And not with this game either, because it was so much better with the mouse, in my opinion. Just drag, hover over where you want to shoot, and shoot. It felt a lot more accurate than using the Super Scope. That being said, I still could never beat the third stage. So the third stage, you're trying to protect John Connor. He's inside this beat-up pickup truck trying to get the Skynet. And, yeah, that truck got blown up every time. Could never get past that third stage. Love the game. That was incredibly fun, but also incredibly difficult. So in my emulation days, I did beat this game, yes, with my mouse, but I was a dirty cheater. I loaded up some codes, specifically invulnerability for me, and invulnerability for that truck. And that's how I managed to get through this game. The stage after, you go through Skynet, and you teleport back in time, which is really cool. Afterwards, you have a few stages in the modern era, at least modern era for the time. The part where you go through the lab to blow up all the Terminator stuff back in time, that was really cool. You have to, of course, protect Sarah Connor, and you have to protect John as they're planting bombs in the area. Really cool touch. Then you have another truck chase scene, this time with the T-1000 coming at you in a helicopter. And this stage is also incredibly difficult. Like, even with cheats, I struggled with it. It was like the stage would just go on forever. I don't know if I was doing something wrong or not, but I had to use a stage skip to get to the final showdown with the T-1000, which is a really cool showdown, with him popping up all over. John Connor is throwing you the shotgun that you have to use to take him out. You can't take him out with your regular weapon. All you can do is damage him with your regular weapon, but you can't actually finish him off with it. But overall, it was a really, really fun game. Very, very difficult, though. I really wish there was a way to tone down the difficulty, but this is one of those LJN games that I feel was really, really good. Which is a shame, because it kind of shares a name in a way with Terminator 2 on the Super Nintendo, which is one of the worst games I have ever played. But this one's actually called T2 the Arcade Game. But could you imagine asking your parents for Terminator 2 for your birthday or Christmas or something, and they get you the actual Terminator 2 game and not T2 the arcade game version? Oh, what a disaster that would be. And I can almost guarantee it happened to some poor kid. But I really did enjoy this game, and while I was looking for stuff for this episode, I did find a couple of commercials I want to play, but I want to play the weird commercial first. And I say it's a weird one because apparently this commercial was on WWF Superstars or something at the time, like some WWF program. And it's Lord Alfred Hayes talking about Terminator, and it's great, but it feels so weird. So y'all gotta listen to this. Check this out.
The #1 arcade shooter of all time explodes onto Genesis and Game Boy in T2, the arcade game. Blast endoskeletons and defeat the T-1000 in T2, the arcade game.
And you know what? I was a wrestling fan back then, just like I am right now. So I know I probably heard that commercial at some point. And I probably didn't think anything of it. But these days, hearing it Like, if you're a wrestling guy, especially old school wrestling, it's so weird to hear Lord Alfred Hayes plugging the Terminator. Although it could be just me. Maybe he plugged all kinds of stuff back then, and I'm just not remembering it because, of course, you tune out that kind of stuff. You're there for the wrestling, and there he is, Lord Alfred Hayes, plugging Terminator 2. Now, funnily enough, I could not find a commercial for the Super Nintendo version. I found one that talks about the Game Boy and the Sega Genesis version, neither of which I really played. I might have rented the Genesis version once, and the graphics were a bit of a downgrade, and on top of that, I did not have the Menacer, so I probably rented it once to check it out, and that was probably it. But, yeah, it looks like it's serviceable from what I've seen on YouTube, and I did emulate it, and same thing, it looks serviceable, but for me, I always stuck with the Super Nintendo version. That being said, this commercial is going to cover the Genesis and the Game Boy version, so let's check that out real quick.
When I play Terminator 2 with the Sega Menacer, I'm not afraid of deadly hunter killers, the indestructible T-1000, endless endoskeletons, the evil Skynet, nothing.
Bobby! Come give your Aunt Bertha a big kiss.
Well, almost nothing.
Those were definitely some fun commercials for the era. But this game, really, it got ported to everything. Like, I mostly played it in the Super Nintendo, like I keep saying. But there was a Genesis version as well that I do remember. But then we have the versions I don't remember. Apparently the Game Boy got a version, which we heard about in that commercial. But also the Game Gear got a version. I wonder how the Game Gear handled that. On top of that, the Master System got a version, which I never even saw that. I assume that wasn't in the United States, although I could be wrong. I don't know. DOS got a version, and the Amiga got a version as well. So really, this thing went everywhere. And I'm glad, because I really do enjoy it. Yeah, it's hard. This game's hard as nails, but I do think it's a really, really fun game. It's really easy for you to pick up today. Like, if you want the Super Nintendo version, I believe it's like $10 as of this recording on eBay. If you're a huge fan, which I am a huge fan, but I don't have room for this thing, but the arcade 1-up version is still available at a few retailers. I think it goes for like $700 or $800. But it gives you a light gun machine in your place without having to set everything up. Of course, I recommend just setting up your own setup with a PC running MAME. Get yourself a nice X-Arcade Tank Stick Max. Get a couple of send-in light guns, and you're set for almost any arcade game that you'd ever want to play. But that being said, if you don't want to mess with all that, and you just have a few favorites, and this game happens to be one of them, the arcade 1-up is a cool little option. But that's mostly it from my memories of this game. I did enjoy it quite a bit. Hopefully we brought back some memories of it for you guys if you played it before. If you haven't, go check it out, especially if you're a fan of light gun games. That's like a series that really has died out. I haven't seen a really good light gun game in a long time. I think Silent Scope might have been the final light gun big hit, and it's been forever since that game came out. I remember like it getting ported like Game Boy Advance and whatnot. But yeah, for any fan of light gun games, this one's an instant one to check out. Even though, again, hard as nails, but definitely fun. So let's listen to some more music from it before we roll that outro. As always, thank you for checking out another episode of Afterglow. If you're interested in more podcast goodness, be sure to check out our link tree in the show notes. All kinds of good stuff in there. There's the Discord if you'd like to come hang out and chat some. We have links to many friends of the show, all of them doing their own podcasts. And if you're looking for more gaming goodness, there's many good shows in there. I cannot recommend them enough. There's also links to the Patreon if you'd like to support the show for just $1 a month and get a shout out at the end of every episode. On top of all that, there is a merch store. Maybe you want an Afterglow t-shirt for some strange reason that I can't figure out, but if you want one, it is there in that merch store. And as always, the special shout outs go to TobyVonDoom from Secret Levels, who's designed the show logo for us, and also Grim from the Lost and Gone podcast, who's designed our intro and outro music. Stick around and listen to some of the friends of the show, and maybe check some of them out. Thanks for listening.
Hello, my name is Aaron. I'm one half of SuperPod Saga, a topical variety video game podcast fueled entirely by nostalgia and unleaded gasoline. SuperPod Saga, we discuss a different video game topic each and every week. We have new episodes every single Monday covering a different video game topic. More than anything, we want to entertain our listeners and make you feel like you're one of the boys, like you're hanging out at a campfire with some of your best zany, caffeine-powered buddies and just talking about your favorite games and all that stuff. Stop on down to SuperPod Saga. It's on every podcatcher there is. If it's not, let me know and we'll get on it. But again, SuperPod Saga, stop on by.
Hey there, Afterglow gang. Keith Gasper here, the host of what I'm told is the #1 retro gaming podcast available on the internet, the Main Quest Podcast. The Main Quest is an ongoing project wherein I'm replaying the entire library of games that I grew up with, sharing my memories associated with those games, and deciding if that bit of media still holds up today. Every episode I am often, but not always, joined by a friend as we discuss the gameplay, presentation, and most importantly, where that game came from, who took part in its inception, and what kind of legacy it left behind, if any. Because honestly, not every game can be Tetris. It's not enough to walk away from each episode having had fun, but hopefully, you also learned something about your favorite video game, or maybe even a game that you've never even heard of. So come on over, have a listen to the extensive backlog of Main Quest Podcast, available of course on all major podcasting platforms, and look out for brand new episodes coming in 2025. And of course, hey, always remember, it's okay to like a video game.
Hello and welcome to the Reviews Brothers. It's me, Martin, and you can join me on YouTube where I have hundreds of videos covering a huge range of video game topics. I've got top 10s, hidden gems, console-focused A to Zs, as well as dedicated videos to topics like Doom mods, 3D platform games, ninja games, pirate games, and more. I cover all systems from Commodore 64 right up to modern consoles. Nothing gaming is off the table. So be sure to search for the Reviews Brothers on YouTube as well as on Instagram and TikTok for hundreds of retro and modern video game reviews.
For more than 15 years, Retro Gaming Roundup has been the centre of your retro gaming universe, with top 10s, interviews, game reviews, news, and much more from all over the globe. Be sure to tune in every month for a new dose of Retro Gaming Roundup. That's RetroGamingRoundup.com.
Hey, this is Toby, one half of the Secret Levels podcast. We're a podcast that goes over old retro games. We go over the history, the story, the gameplay, some fun facts. We even rage a little bit. And then we go and give it a nice 1 to 10 rating to let you know if it's still worth playing. We have over 200 reviews for games on the NES, the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and many other consoles. You can find us on all the major podcasting apps, such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you can follow us on social media at Secret Levels Pod. Game over, folks.